Howdy, and welcome back to Yates American B244. In this segment, I'm going to touch on a lot of random rust removal and paint removal tasks. And periodically during this segment, I mention about using muriatic acid, and I talk about flash rust. It's important to note that I've completely abandoned the use of muriatic acid. So when I talk about flash rust, the reason for the flash rust was the muriatic acid. So I've since given away all my muriatic acid to neighbors that have swimming pools. Maybe some chemists can chime in on why that is. I don't know if there's residue of muriatic acid, or maybe there's chlorine that's residual left over from rinsing off the muriatic acid. I did find you can neutralize the effects of that muriatic acid and the flash rust by rinsing the part down with a solution of baking soda and water, but that's a whole nother task of rinsing and all that. So I would tend to stick with some of the better known rust removal products. Evaporust is really good for smaller parts. Evaporust also has a spray-on product that you can use for larger parts. And then of course there's Rust-Oleum spray. Okay, let's get into the ugliness. These discs are pretty good for stripping paint. You do need to keep them away from sharp edges though. Well, I was able to get some of the rust off with that wire brush. I'm going to get the rest off with electrolysis. This is after just a few hours. This has been in here a few days now, so let's see what we got. I've been cleaning things up and getting them ready to put back together to test the motor, and I found a little manufacturing defect here. There's a ridge right here. While I was wire brushing this, it turned out it's got a bunch of body putty on it, like it did on the J180. So I'm going to strip everything off, or at least as much as I can. That's going to be a lot of rust removal. And the usual mud dauber nets. Here's another look at this spot where it looks like they've drilled out a structural member of the casting. They must have done that because they couldn't get the reeds drive out past whatever lip was here. I got tired of all that dust from wire brushing. I think after a power wash and blow dry, the surface underneath the base is good enough to paint a primer coat on, just enough to kind of protect it in the future. Okay, I decided at the last minute to spray this down with a 50-50 solution of muriatic acid and water, just to get some more of the rust residue off. I decided to try paint stripping, rust removal, and power washing all at the same time. So I've got citrus strip on the painted surfaces of this thing, and then I've sprayed it down with muriatic acid. Well, I've used citrus strip and muriatic acid to get paint and rust off of most of the parts. And I'm using these Koenig area strip discs. You can get them at Amazon. And they do a really good job of knocking down the high spots and getting residual paint off and residual rust. They are consumable, so they do wear down after a little while. So the table is my last big nemesis for surface prep. I've got some citrus strip on some of the painted surfaces, and I'm going to try to do some wire brushing before I spray it down with muriatic acid. I'm hoping between wire brushing and those handy little strip discs that I can get this surface finished nicely enough without having to go in for a Blanchard grind or something like that. In any case, once it's cleaned up, I'll check it with a precision straight edge and see what kind of a surface we've got. I had the table all power washed and de-rusted, stripped of paint, or at least most of the paint. There's a little bit of flash rust. So I wanted to check the table for flatness, so I put the center plate back on. To my surprise, the center plate is about 50 thousandths above the field tables on both sides. And apparently that is fairly common for larger planers. So I made the same check across the middle of the table, the opposite edge, and the diagonals. And surprisingly, the 50 thousandths gap was very consistent on all locations. So I'm not going to worry about the flatness of the table. I am going to try to get it smoothed out. I'll use a combination of sanding discs and the strip discs. Try to get that polished up a little bit.